What's the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? When I was in college in the early 2000s, a sophomore drove his car into a bunch of kids out partying on a Saturday a block and a half from where I was living. He was going 60 to 70 miles per hour, swiping cars parked on the side of the road before he hit the crowd. I think 4 people died. He got out screaming nonsense before being tackled, was on a handful of drugs. Last I heard, he was in a mental facility. Really good friend of mine in college was still living with his parents and had this absolute ditz of a girlfriend who also lived with him at his parents'. They were both 19 at the time and decided to try for a baby, except neither of them had jobs or even their own place. They also did not tell his parents beforehand, wanting it to be a surprise, genuinely thinking it would make each other and their parents so happy. Now she's off doing meth again, and he's living with his parents, still working at Wendy's while his parents takes care of his daughter. All of his income goes to helping take care of her. I had a friend, my old and first best friend in middle school. We were closer than my actual brother, and same for him. He was without a doubt my rock, and I was his. He was a very, very good and talented marching drummer in general. The dude was learning college licks and rudiments top tier in literal hours. It was fucking insane. He got to play with UCLA and USC's drumline at 14 and didn't miss a beat with them. His mom unfortunately passed away when he was 15. He turned to heavy drugs, insane amount of drinking, and fucking anything that walked. I recently saw him in the beginning of March, and I won't lie, I didn't even recognize him. It took me a solid 30 seconds to realize who it was that was calling my name. Extremely skinny, bags under eyes, greasy hair, and dirty teeth. I felt fucking terrible. I couldn't do anything. But what could I do? He ran away from home, dropped out of school, wasn't on any social media, had no contact with family, and honestly, had no family at all besides his dad, aunt, 2 extremely distant cousins, and a brother in the Marines. I haven't seen or heard from him since. He could have passed away and I wouldn't have known. Replied, that's really depressing. Editor. Oh, believe me, I know. Had to see firsthand my best friend throw his life away. I had a friend in college who had a tendency to act before thinking, but was generally fun and well-meaning. After I had graduated, my friend apparently got coerced by a woman he was trying to sleep with to try heroin just once. As I heard it, he refused initially, then caved because he felt pressured. My friend overdosed and died. Just like that, one bad decision ended his life. Rip Mike. A former acquaintance was playing around with a homemade crossbow that I'd helped him with. I was massively into archery and fletching, and he seemed serious about it. I typically made him leave it with me because deadly weapon, I have an explanation? He kinda didn't. Anyway, to convince his parents to let him join an archery club, he wanted to show off the crossbow we made. I thought it was a decent plan, so let him take it without any ammo. Turns out he was gaming me to get more playtime with his favorite toy, had gotten hold of some bolts, and was fucking around shooting his shed a fair bit. He somehow ended up firing a bolt that missed the shed completely, passed between the slats on his fence, and hit his neighbor's daughter in the spine. She hasn't walked since. He got fucked up real bad by her unstable older brother. They both did jail time. Acquaintance was disowned and ended up homeless. And now I'm not sure where they are in life. Edit. I've had a few people comment that even a stable person would want to fuck up someone for something like this. Truth told, I half agree. I still feel like it's important information to the situation, however, and just want to qualify the statement. The beating he got was brutal, involved a crowbar, and left him with a broken femur. The difference between wanting to do something like that and actually acting on it is important. Also, we were 18 at the time. The girl was 12, her brother 21, for all those asking. Edit 2. The brother had a history of anger management issues and drug abuse, and a small list of prior misdemeanors. This man isn't someone you should be elevating just because his negativity was concentrated on someone who you say deserved it. I'm not here to argue about the ethics of his actions, or whether or not his instability was a factor in his reaction. It was. Stable people don't find revelry in inflicting grievous bodily harm on others. 2 wrongs, eye for an eye, and all that. About 50 years ago, when my great-uncle was in his early 20s, He drove home so drunk that he ran over and killed 2 college students and didn't even realize it. After his initial incarceration, he didn't know how to function as a free citizen, so he keeps getting himself sent back to jail. For example, he got out of jail around a year ago and couldn't make his first month's rent. His solution was to walk to the convenience store, steal a beer, and sit on the curb waiting for the cops to arrive. I had a friend years back, always kind of an odd guy, but he had a good heart. Anyway, one day I was hanging out with him and a few other friends, and he told us he was going to get a tattoo tomorrow and had this super cool idea, but he wouldn't tell us what it was because he wanted it to be a surprise. We saw him about a week later. He had tattooed 3/4 of his face green, like no design or anything, just solid dark forest green. Basically, he just left the top right quarter of his face normal, and the rest was all green. He had been immediately fired from his job the day after getting the tattoo. I kind of lost touch with him shortly after that, since he moved to another city. I'd heard he wound up living in his car. No idea why he did what he did. He'd had a very good job in IT at a pretty big company and was making decent money. No clue why he thought permanently turning 3/4 of his face green would be super awesome. Edit. Okay, my inbox kind of exploded overnight. I have no idea why he got fired. It was about 15 years ago, and the company he worked for seemed pretty stuffy. For all I know, maybe he actually quit and just told us he got fired. Maybe he'd gone in and did something crazy, inappropriate, that he neglected to mention. No clue. As for the tattoo artist, I have no idea who did it. Again, for all I know, he paid some meth head to do it. I don't have any tattoos myself, so I'm really not an expert on the topic. I've got to think there are some unscrupulous artists out there who don't give a shit as long as they're getting paid, though. I was there when my older brother tried heroin for the first time. Fast forward 15 years, and he is constantly going to the hospital for abscesses that appear on his arms and legs, and is almost completely cut off from the rest of the family because he's robbed our parents more than once. Every few years, he swears he is going to kick the habit. The first few times, we collectively ponied up cash to send him to rehab and tried to be as supportive as we could. After the 10th relapse or so, we're too exhausted to even pretend to be hopeful about his newest attempt to get clean. Edit. Thanks for all of the positive feedback. In the Air Force, this new guy joins and goes out to a bar, then decides to drive home. Gets a DUI, loses all his rank, has to pay a ton in fines, but leadership fought for him and he was allowed to stay in the Air Force. 2 months later, as he's paying tons of lawyer and legal fees, he does something really stupid. Drives home from the same bar drunk and gets arrested. Loses his license and gets kicked out of the military, so loses all his income while he's thousands of dollars in debt. That's not even the worst part. A few months later, he celebrates being a civilian again by, you guessed it, going to the same bar, then driving home drunk, arrested and put in jail for a while. I can't imagine he has many future career opportunities with a less than honorable discharge and an arrest record. Edit. I should have added that the third DUI included charges for driving without a license, since he had it suspended after the second. I had an acquaintance who was pretty successful, early 30s, good job, homeowner, etc. His next-door neighbors had custody of their niece, a 16-year-old cheerleader who was home alone all the time. They struck up a friendship. Need I say more? Actually, yes. The cops stop him randomly with her in the passenger seat. They ID her since she looks young. Call her guardians, who deny that he has permission to take her anywhere. Here's the thing. They had crossed a county line. Boom, kidnapping charge. They break him in interrogation, and he admits to sex. Boom, statutory rape charges. They convince him to unlock his phone and find her nudes in his inbox. Boom, child pornography charges. Boom, goes the cell door. I went to school with a group of kids this happened to, almost exact. We weren't friends, but I knew them in passing. As far as I know, no one lit anything on fire for the group I'm talking about. But my building made an announcement at the beginning of the day, right after it happened, explaining that so-and-so was going to be out for several months. We should give her support, but also space, that kind of thing. Turns out when the car flipped, she fell out and shattered most of the bones in her legs. She was out for so long to do some intense rehab physical therapy. As far as I know, she's kicking ass these days. kid who was driving the car went to jail, despite being a minor. Less than 24 hours. My ex-neighbor's ex-girlfriend went on a racist road rage rant that got filmed. It went viral on Twitter. I remember reading the news article and thinking about her for some reason. She wasn't named. It wasn't until months later that I found out it was her. She was fired from her $300,000 a year job next day and immediately started getting death threats. She had to move in with her boyfriend. She tried getting a job, but people would look her up and be like, WTF. She spent $10,000 on a reputation defender, changed her name, was shunned by many family and friends. Her boyfriend, who she wanted to marry, broke up with her because he couldn't stand the months of depression. She ended up leaving the state. I was a licensed firearms owner in Canada, and I sold a handful of handguns to my crack dealer when I was still smoking a few years back, and it caught up to me 3 years after I got sober. I'm going to court for sentencing in a couple of months, with the prosecutor seeking 6 to 8 years. And although it may not seem like that much in the grand scheme of things, but since I quit smoking crack, I got my driver's license, started my own construction business, and I'm in a 4-year relationship with an amazing woman who was the reason for my getting sober. All of that is going to be gone, and my grandpa, who is the only family who raised me I have left, will most likely be gone because of him being 84. I'm not sure where you would count the life being ruined. The second I made the decision to sell the firearms, the second the RCMP and local police pulled me over with 20 cars in morning rush hour, my name being put in the newspaper with my crime, or when I get sentenced in a few months. I've decided it was the second I made the decision. It helps to be insane. I say that as someone who is certifiably bonkers. I worked with an engineer at a manufacturing facility at one point in my career. We'll call him Bob Dobbs. We had defense-related contracts with major players like Boeing. It was not this man's job to design anything, but to do manufacturing shit. At some point within a year of my arriving, he began answering the phone with customers as Bob Dobbs, engineering manager, and insisting that all communication go through him. He got away with this for nearly 3 months until someone called the actual engineering manager asking for Bob Dobbs, the engineering manager. Due in no small part to the what the fuckery involved, a review of Bob Dobbs' work began. He had been redesigning, optimizing customer designs before they went to production. There was almost $1 million of scrap sitting on the shop floor. He was terminated and began a career delivering pizza. My stupid ex-girlfriend, in an effort to pay back a loan shark, maced the opening manager of a Blockbuster and stole the bank deposit bags. Then she went and picked up her niece and nephews, all under age 8, and causally drove around with them. She got felony stopped on a major roadway. Her photo was on the top stories at 10, lead-in to that evening's NUA. This happened during the NBA Finals that year. I think it was during Game 6 or 7. So huge viewing audience. Oh, she was easily recognized and apprehended because her best friend was store manager of that Blockbuster, and she was there all the time. And she had dropped off an application the day before. She spent the next 3 years in a women's prison. A guy I went to high school with thought he'd make good bank selling his medical dexamphetamines to other school kids, no matter what the age. He used to say, "Dad says ADHD is quack science, but Mom gets them for me anyway, so whatever." One of the local gangs found out he was dealing on the sly in their turf. He saved himself from a hospital trip by agreeing to deal for them and help mule stuff into the local federal prison. He thought he could get away with it because his father was a CO there. He forgot he lived in a small town, and some local he supplied there eventually ratted him out to save themselves. Idiot's son was charged and caught a 10-year sentence. Didn't matter he was 17, he was done. Father barely saved his job after it was confirmed he was innocent and not involved. Was very lucky to hush up the whole thing with the union behind him. Son was disowned, wore all the blame, and is a pariah dog now to anyone who ever knew him. Worked in the German social welfare system, aka Sachbearbeiter im Sozialamt. A client of mine said he thinks that my calculations would be wrong after his wife left him, because he got not enough money. I asked him if he had any expenses I didn't know of. He was sure he gave me all infos. I asked him to bring me all his invoices, vouchers, receipts, etc., which he did a few days later. I read all his papers and found a pay slip that I didn't know of. According to my files, he got social welfare at this time, and I had no infos that he had a job with income, which would be social welfare fraud. I kept reading, and I found a so-called Versicherungspolice, an insurance policy for a 5er BMW. You should know that back in the day, a car was a salvageable capital, aka he had to have his car sold to use that money for groceries, etc. It was mid-90s, it's different now. Then I found the purchase contract for the car, expensive and with installment payments. Then I found the contract with the bank that gave him the loan for the car. So I called the bank and asked them why the hell they are giving a loan that big to an unemployed social welfare recipient. The woman from the bank began to panic because that's new information to her. And while she was trying to explain what happened, the loan had burst because my client didn't pay, etc. I figured out that something is wrong with the payslip. You should know that in Germany, the 4-digit postal code, including the sublocal code, like 1000 Berlin 44, was changed to a 5-digit postal code, 12345 Berlin, in 1993. The payslip was from 1995, but the postal code on that thing was from 1993. He forged the payslip to get the loan to get the car, because his wife told him he needed a better car to keep her. So he did all this, but 2 bubble burst because he couldn't afford to pay the installments. And just because he asked me to recalculate him and brought all his infos without sorting them out properly, I was able to prove that he committed some felonies, which BT Baru doesn't mean that he ends up in jail or that he gets arrested, etc. He told me the story, I said what I have to do now and what might happen in the next weeks. Both have been charged and convicted of social welfare fraud, insurance fraud, falsification of documents, and sneaking bank loans using fake income information. Was dating a girl whose little sister got knocked up when she was around 17, 6 months pregnant, drinking straight vodka at a family party. I pointed it out to then GF. Family did nothing, mother didn't care, didn't want to smell the bottle of water, said it was a lie. Baby mama trapped some guy with the "you're the father" speech around month 8 of pregnancy. I, behind the scene, paid for a DNA test for him. Baby wasn't his. He mentally broke as soon as he heard it. Baby mama didn't care, laughed it off. She was just trying to nail down someone with a job. She has no clue who the father was. Baby was born with bad type of fetal alcohol syndrome. She's 10 now, severely disabled. Grandmother takes care of her. Baby mama still does hard drugs and passes out birthday blowjobs. Many lives ruined. The one that sticks out the most was the guy who was supposedly the father. Watch joy disappear from one second to the next in his eyes. The rest don't care, and it's sickening. Edit 1. Did some digging, turns out the wannabe baby daddy died of an OD 3 years ago. My ex cheated on me with a mentally unstable woman. He lied about working late one night to go hook up with her. She got mad at him and punished him by filing false rape charges. He was pulled over and hauled to jail 2 blocks from her apartment complex. He was locked up in the sex offender unit of one of the worst county jails in the country over Christmas. The case never went to trial. The grand jury no-billed him for lack of evidence of a crime. But he ended up losing me, losing his affair partner, losing his main job, losing his volunteer work, losing his side job, losing his savings account, ruining his credit, losing visitation with his daughters from a previous relationship, losing his car, losing most of his friends, losing several family relationships, and wound up living with his mom. He also still has the arrest record because he can't afford to have it expunged, so it shows up on every background check. It was like 4 hours between the time he called me to say he was working late and when the cops pulled him over and arrested him. In 4 hours, he completely destroyed his life. My sister's husband. First, this guy was completely worthless and a liar. You know how you can meet someone and instantly know just by looking in his face that he's scum? That was him when I first met him. My sister moved in with him, got pregnant from him, married him. Almost 3 years ago, they were still married and raising 2 daughters. They got evicted but managed to somehow find a new place to move into. Amazing given how most apartments will not rent to you if you've ever been evicted. And within 3 months, they were getting evicted again. Now, he had a job when they were dating. At this point, their oldest daughter is 15 years old, almost 16, and she has no memory of her dad ever having a job. His solution to avoiding eviction was to tell my sister to call everyone in her phone's contact list and beg for money while he did some black tar heroin and got drunk. Explains why they had no money for rent. She called our stepbrother's wife, a woman who makes well into the six figures. She could loan you $5,000 faster than a payday loan company. She and I get along great, but I'd never ask her for money. We aren't close enough for that, even though she'd probably be willing. She was willing to give them the money, no strings, no need to pay it back. Our stepmom told her not to do it. They are in this mess because of their bad choices and to let them figure out the solution on their own. Then stepmom called me and told me about my sister begging for money and not to loan one red cent. I bailed my sister out of jail the year before, and she didn't believe that she should pay me back the bail money. I learned not to give my sister any money. 2 hours later, I was visiting the ER to see my sister. When the family refused to bail my sister and her family out of their situation, my sister's husband snapped. He beat my sister, choked her until she passed out. My sister says that she believed that she was going to die at that point, put her nose in his mouth and ripped one nostril off her face. When the 15-year-old daughter saw this, she grabbed a sword and was going to kill him. He knocked the sword from her and choke slammed her into the ground. He was arrested while yelling angrily and asking for someone, anyone, to kill him. He remained in jail until his trial. No one bailed him out. Some were willing to until they learned what he did. Then they decided that he was best left behind bars. The state, Texas, wanted 25 years for the savage, almost animalistic attack on my sister, as well as the attack on the daughter. Since he had no prior arrests, he was sentenced to a 6-month boot camp-like program, followed by parole upon successful completion of the program. He was also ordered to go through alcohol and drug counseling, as well as anger management. Restraining order against him from my sister and their kids. Double felon, assault on his wife, assault on a minor, who can't own any form of a weapon. On probation for like 10 years, where if he fucks up, he can get his parole taken away and go back for the full 25 years. Not only can he not own a weapon, but there is random drug and alcohol testing. He has to pay for the testing, his monthly PO visits, pay child support, as well as restitution on top monthly bills, such as rent and utilities. Every so often, I search his name to see what pops up. He's been arrested a few more times. One was over the course of Thanksgiving the first year after he completed the program, and last year he was picked up for public intoxication and giving the arresting officer a false name. He hasn't paid any money in child support, nor has he made any effort to see he is allowed chaperone visitation, or even contact them. Direct contact is not allowed, but they can go through lawyers. A guy I knew that was in all the advanced classes and shit decided against college and went for MLM instead. His life isn't ruined per se, but IDK anyone that has contact with him, and from what I can tell, he has new jobs all the time. It's more like a wasted potential story, I guess. I lost contact with him after he tried to get me to join an MLM. I said, IDK, this sounds like a pyramid scheme, and the guy ahead of him got on the line and yelled at me for like 2 minutes straight. He texted an apology after, and we haven't talked since. I am friends with a guy and through him knew his younger sister. Smart, pretty, cool. She was doing well in college. Meets a guy and decided to get married after a few weeks without telling anyone. So she moves in with him, and all of the sudden he has too much back pain to work. So she's trying to take classes and support them both. He lays around all day smoking pot, which she buys for his pain, while she does school and waits tables all night. She also likes to party with him. It's revealed they've both been doing a lot of acid. She, of course, drops out of college a few credits short of graduating. By this point, her parents and friends are begging her to come to her senses and take their help to get back and finish college. Invite both of them to move in and do all the drugs they want as long as she finishes school. Her and the husband decided the student loans plus both his and her car loans are too much. So they parked the cars at the bank with notes in the windshield that they do not want them anymore and disappeared. They left a note for her parents that they were moving out west or to Mexico and haven't been heard from in over 15 years. My friend heard rumors that the guy was pimping his sister out at one point, but that was after they left that he heard, too late to do anything. About 5 years ago, he told me he thinks she's probably dead, but the parents are expecting her to come back any day now. The parents used to be joyous people. Eat it. Since this is blowing up, there's more context. She loved her parents so much and didn't want to go away to college. She commuted to a university in the city. She was a junior when she met him. We smoked weed and she always looked down on us for it. So her doing acid and weed and ecstasy all of a sudden was really shocking. The family wasn't very religious, but the husband got her obsessed with the Book of Revaluations. In one of the interactions I had with her, we were all high, and she told me that the world was ending soon, and I needed to read Revaluations. They disappeared on purpose to get out of all the loan debt. It's believed that they changed identities. There's some confusion amongst the friend group if the guy was Mormon or not, but my closest friend is convinced she's living in a fundamentalist Mormon cult in northern Mexico, which he says is a thing. I agree with the brother that they both probably got into harder drugs, and she's dead. There's addiction in the family, and she went from not drinking to daily weed acid rolls so quick. And moving away from family to pursue drugs is classic addict behavior. I work at a shelter. We had this one kid living with us. His parents abandoned him when he was 6, so the people and kids living and working at the shelter were all the family he had left. In the months before his 18th birthday, he made some serious debt, so we gave him the chance to stay longer with us, pay everything off before moving out. But this guy was kind of stupid, and so on the day of his 18th birthday, he signed a lease for a flat, where he lived together with the girlfriend and kids of an older friend, against all of our advice. At least he got a caretaker for his finances, so we thought things might eventually turn out okay. But we were wrong. He ignored caretaker's calls, threw a party where he gave strong alcohol to minors and got kicked out eventually. Then he lost his job. Then the friend who took him in after said party kicked him out. And he is still in debt without work or a home, just because he thought he was smart and didn't want to live under our rules once he turned 18. Couple of guys I knew in college were Division I athletes, but for a niche sport nobody really followed. One night they got drunk and decided it would be a great idea to bleach their initials into the AstroTurf on the football field. Really bad idea, but it got so much worse. Turns out bleach and AstroTurf create a chemical reaction: fire. They burned down the entire field of a Division I football stadium, caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages, made national news. It was bad. Everybody thought they did it on purpose, like some kind of terrorist act. Their only defense was, no, we're not terrorists, we're just idiots. Saddest part was they got expelled from college in their senior years, didn't graduate, and kind of descended into loserdom almost immediately. Typing this is bumming me out.